good afternoon, and welcome to another compliance catch-up. My name is James Hogbin. I'm the founder of Fingerprint Compliance, e-supervision and policy workflow engine that automates all things communications monitoring. Today, I am joined by a very good friend of mine, John Wowak from Gryphon Compliance. John and I met and have been working together for 3 or 4 years now in the US, and hopefully he will appear on screen right now. John, hello, how are you?
Hey, James, thanks for having me.
Tell everybody a little bit about your history, because it's seriously impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, now I can say I've 25 years plus in the financial services industry. First half of my career started off as a CPA and auditor with Ernst & Young. Eventually moved from the dark side to the better side as CFO, COO of a fixed income manager. From there, I learned a little bit about CCO consulting and compliance and Dodd-Frank, and eventually migrated to compliance consulting firm led by Todd Sipperman. And that's where you and I met, James, years ago. From there, eventually landed at Gryphon with the desire of opening my own business and really getting back to true compliance consulting and making it a people business. So having landed here at Gryphon Compliance Services for the past 2 years, I have 2 partners, Frank Ingram and Jason Owasco, and we are providing chief compliance officer outsourcing to the industry, broker dealers, funds, and investment advisors. That's a quick story, but it's a long 25 years.
You're only 37, but you've aged a bit over the time.
I'm celebrating my 12th anniversary of my 37th birthday.
Perfect. And so for our European viewers, we're used to a regulatory environment where the compliance officer can only be the compliance officer for a single firm. There's a little group exemption, but effectively the regulators see the compliance officer as a named and codified person with a range of formal responsibilities that can be held responsible for the actions of the firm for which they've been registered. And they can only be registered to one of them. Clearly, that's not the case with the US regulatory regime. Can you just explain a little bit about the CCO model and how it works, and we can discuss the differences from the model in the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no clear, with the laws in place in the US from the SEC, FINRA, and all the regulatory bodies, there is no requirement for the CCO to be credentialed, registered with any regulatory body or have any licensing yet. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later, where we see things going, but there are no restrictions on who can be the CCO. However, through enforcement and through other exam actions by the SEC, they kind of say, okay, well, the CCO needs to have these standards and these rules. So what we mostly saw when Dodd-Frank came out and people were migrating, the CFO, the COO was wearing the dual hat of chief compliance officer. And the industry quickly saw that that wasn't working. So they were trying to get more experts in the industry to be the CCO, or to have the CCO as a sole officer of the companies. And what has formed is many in the US here is the concept of compliance consulting, where instead of going to a lawyer, there are shops here that provide compliance services directly to broker dealers, investment advisors, and they're the so-called experts. What we saw years ago was the need and the you like the so-called experts.
Yeah.
Self-acclaimed. So what we saw was a migration towards cost-effective compliance and the need for a truly named CCO. So part of the law here is that each investment advisor needs to have a named chief compliance officer on their registrations. And then in the laws, it will say what your chief compliance officer needs to be knowledgeable, have the appropriate expertise. And what we formed as a consulting shop is experienced executives who sat in the compliance officer role at various firms. Frank and Jason have sat in that role at their prior shops. I've sat in that role. And now the consulting is moving to an outsourcing model of saying, instead of hiring someone directly to come in and just be our sole CCO, we can hire an outsourced CCO that has the experience and it's cost effective to us, and they deliver an efficient compliance program to our folks, to our employees, and to the regulators. So forming, we then, as part of our consulting relationship, take on that CCO role for clients. Now, we go through good due diligence and background checks on what type of firms we take. As they look at us the same way, we find the best fit to partner with. For us here at Gryphon, it's more of the mid to lower end of the industry that we provide what
In
some
terms of numbers, right? Not quality, right? It's
correct.
the smaller firms that value it, right? Because
Yep.
from tier ones at the top with 30,000 people, you guys are targeting the 10-person shop up to 100-person shop type of thing. To be clear, not low quality as in.
Yep, exactly.
Pyramid schemes.
So we always say it's somewhere below the 5 billion under management. 100 is probably good. We have some clients with more than that, depending on their product and their strategy and their model and the scalability of that. So we partner with them. So we are the true named CCO on their regulatory documents. We at Gryphon have formed a compliance framework or compliance program that has been through 12, 13 years of change and updating. So there's a list of services that we provide in addition to being the named CCO, and we implement that program. And our model is in bringing in the best of breed in the industry, such as yourselves and Fingerprint, to do some of our service that we deliver to the client. And we try to maintain, we're not going to, there's no limit on number of CCOs that I can have or that Jason can have, but we obviously know that we have to apply our resources to appropriately, whether it's economically or whether it's regulatorily, to each of those clients. So we're very strategic on who we name CCO, and then we eventually build a team here of providing those other services. So you're getting a team with a named CCO to provide those services. And we do all of the services that a normal in-house CCO would do.
And so imagine that I'm a representative of a 10 or 15 person firm with a couple of yards under management. You would come in with all the policies and procedures, or you would rely on me to do them? To your scope, obviously you're the named CCO on my documents. How much do you bring with you, or how much do you want to bring with you in terms of, here's how we do the filings, here's the mechanism, here's how we do the training, here's the mechanism, here's how we do the registrations, here's how we review the financial promotions, here's how we pass the cyber exams, etc., etc. How much of that is we recommend you do it versus we bring it all in and do it for you?
So that's really twofold. So if it's a brand new advisor or a brand new broker dealer, they're not going to have the existing policies or not be set in their ways. So we could bring 100% of the program that we have on our side to them and customize it to their operations, whether it's product driven, whether it's If they have 3 employees, it's different than setting up a compliance control environment for 50 people. So we could do that. So new advisors, we bring the policies and the templates, and then through our first 6 months of engagement, we'll fine tune that and customize that to theirs. On the other side, if an existing firm, let's say, been around for 10, 12 years, even 5 years, they're set in their ways of doing certain things and most likely they're required to have a compliance manual and policies in place. We'll come in and we'll use our first annual review to really say, okay, this is working, it's not working. You say you do this, you don't do this. And we'll supplement and enhance that program based on our experience. So if they don't have an effective e-com review, we'll suggest. We want to bring those solutions to the table to enhance their program. We like to say we bring it up to date. So if they've been doing the same thing for 5 or 7 years, we like to analyze that and confirm that and make the changes to our program. So we don't want to come in and say, do it our way or do it the highway. But if we are taking on the CCO liability, we will get that program up to our standards.
And in terms of the liability that you take on, obviously you're a named officer of that firm. How does that liability work? Because in the UK, there's a set of the regulated area called principals. And what principals have is a group of people, firms underneath them, that become members of the principal, and the principal is the regulated person. So there's real sanction between the regulator and the control environment of the principal. So you've got your director as a named person, you've got your sales guys as named people, you've got the compliance officer as a named person. So therefore, there is a real liability to hosting people in the model, whether it's a regulatory hosting or a principal relationship. In the US, when you're going into these firms, what are they saying? John, you are on the hook for ... Or is it very much we'll bring you the bits and pieces, we'll implement it for you, we'll run it for you, but you're on the hook for it as the business owners? Where does that?
So it's a little bit of all of that. When we come in, if you talk to a compliance professional, they'll say all the liabilities with them. But in reality, it starts with the business and it starts with the advisor. So in some cases, we're covered under their insurance. And if there's some malfeasance or fraud being done there, we're covered. The liability that lies with us is really in our expertise. So if we come in and we don't do what we say we're going to do, that's really a business liability that we're not delivering on our contracts with the clients. So they'll hold us accountable. So we take pride in our program of, if all of our folks here at Gryphon are delivering our program as we say we are, we're pretty good on the regulatory liability with the SEC. We're at the forefront. We're out in front with the exam teams and the SEC and the regulatory world. So we believe strongly in our program that the liability personally for us as CCO is very limited. I like to say that the liability question is the inverse of your expertise. If you have no expertise, your liability is high. If you have good experience and you know how to run the program and you're doing what you say you're doing, it lowers the risk of liability. And just to wrap up your question, is from the regulatory standpoint, they don't want to scare people off. They want the experts and the deep compliance professionals doing their job in order to regulate. And that's really the first line of defense against fraud, against people stealing, custody. All of that is the boots on the ground for the regulators are the compliance officers. So they don't really want to attack and go after the compliance officers and scare them off. They want the experienced people in there and programs. One example that we back in my Sipperman days is we had an SEC exam. We showed up on the first day. We're going through the introductions, And they said, okay, well, you're an outsource. Who do you work with? And we said, we're with Zipperman Compliance. I'm the named CCO for this investment advisor. And they're like, oh, we know your program well. So you're in good hands. And that was the best sales pitch that I think we ever have, is that the SEC and that exam team has worked with our program in the past. So
there's a load of people in Europe who are used to the FCA are going, that never happened. The FCA will do none of that, right? They're a very arm's length regulator.
Yeah.
What are the SEC looking for, right? You're in there as the CCO because it's part of the rules that they have policies and procedures, that they're run by somebody and that they're monitored annually is kind of the rule set as I can see it. What are you doing? What does a CCO actually do in terms of protection from SEC exams and the rules and the rest of it? What's the day-to-day look like?
The day-to-day is managing. So we break it down to, what is the ongoing monitoring that we do versus for our contract and the services that we're doing. You have your quarterly and monthly certification process. But I think, being an outsourced CCO, the first question we're going to face is, well, you don't have boots on the ground. How do you have the pulse of the firm? How do you achieve that compliance? So we built the program of having business meetings, some on a weekly basis, some on a monthly basis with the principals of the firm to understand what's changing on their firm. So those meetings, those compliance meetings, and those communications really keep us up to date on what's going on with the client. Not many firms are in an office location anymore. So it is a lot of Zoom meetings. It's a lot of face-to-face over Zoom, and getting to know that client and having them trust you in communicating. So we view our job as, okay, let us know what you want to do. We'll translate it and we'll provide the best compliance guidance to make sure what you're doing meets regulatory standards. So we feel that part of the program of meeting with the right people. So instead of walking down the hall and popping into an office of learning something or hearing something at the water cooler, we're using those meetings to really get the information extracted from and see what our clients are doing. So the SEC will ask that and say, okay, as an outsourced CCO, how do you accomplish being that true administrator of the compliance program? And we feel all those services, those meetings, on-sites. So we do require on-sites with our clients so that we can get there and really enforce. So we do trainings, we do all sorts of things to interact with our clients. And we do all those certifications on the back end and all the paper pushing that compliance folks do. That's standard and that's blocking and tackling for us. But we really feel that face-to-face interaction accomplishes that for us.
In terms of firms that are more actively trading, where there's a risk and a market supervision component and that sort of thing, is that something that you are looking to get into? Is it something that is a bit more problematic because you need to be all over their trade supervision on a daily, monthly, quarterly basis, running risk limits and things like that? How does that factor into an outsourced CCO model?
So the broker-dealer has a concept here in the United States of supervisory roles. So compliance and supervisors are separate. We make sure the supervisory structure of firms is solid so that the people have to be licensed here to do those on the ground for a broker-dealer. You have to have certain licenses to review certain transactions and trading activity to sell securities. So on the broker-dealer side, we're kind of the, let's say, offensive coordinator, and they're the boots on the ground doing the day-to-day supervision. So we're the checkers of the supervisor. We'll make sure that they're doing their job. On the advisor side, we're much more at an arm's length of, hey, here's what you need to do. Do you have an adequate system that's monitoring? And do you have an adequate person sitting in that seat deciphering the information that you're seeing? So we really, and then through our annual review and our testing, compliance testing, we'll provide suggestions or recommendations to enhance that process or not. And then on the fund side, on the investment funds or the registered funds, mutual funds and ETFs here that require CCO, we're really using the administrator to provide that compliance oversight. So whether it's pre-trade or post-trade, they're doing a lot and saying, do you meet this regulatory rule on transactional information? So we view it from one layer above, I guess, than actually doing it. We make sure that if there's a service provider in the middle for a fund, that they're doing an adequate job and reviewing the right things to make sure that any violation would be escalated immediately. So we don't personally review the trades. We just check the checkers.
And I guess that's a difference in the supervision environment in the UK, because the hosts are regulated, then they have to take care of the trade supervision themselves because it's trading on their behalf. It's just happening the firm is using their mnemonic. Therefore, they have to have the risk management. They have to have the market supervision. Whereas in the US, you're just saying, here's the control framework. The compliance framework says you need that person. We'll just check that that person's doing the job that they should be doing.
Yep.
Effectively the game.
Yep. And that's how we build the compliance program. So the distinction is supervisory program and compliance program on the broker-dealer side.
Yeah.
We run the compliance program, which incorporates the supervision.
And how do you understand what is best practice? Is it because you're seeing loads of different firms doing loads of different things, or is there a track within the SEC that you can say, this is what they're looking for, this is what good looks like, these are the areas that we know they'll be focusing on in their exams? How does the regulator over here drive down into the activities that you undertake on behalf of your clients?
So that's the magic in consulting, right? You read the regulation, you read what the regulator expects, and then you talk to the client who wants to do the minimum every time. Clients want to do the absolute minimum.
Surely not.
They don't want any barriers to what they're doing. So it is really our job to meet them halfway. Some are hard conversations saying, hey, regulator, through enforcement or through the SEC provides risk alerts. So if they see something going on in the industry, they publish a risk alert and saying, hey, do it this way. So we form some best practices around that. The SEC commissioners will give speeches and provide some guidance, experience through exams. So we're constantly enhancing that. So we believe our template policies are updated with best practice. So as new regulations are coming out, we're making sure that we're updating our template policies, which we then compare to their policies. So I would say, best practice is developed over experience and through guidance provided by the SEC, through the risk alerts and enforcement actions and all of that. So, once we're in there and we can defend the policy, the regulator could always say you're doing it wrong. But at least if we have a policy and we're implementing that and believe in it, we can defend that. And we believe all of our programs we can defend.
And how approachable is the regulator? Say you had a question about an examination that they were looking at, or a thematic that they're going for. Can you just plonk up to your local SEC rep and say, how are you seeing this? Or are they still quite on high and you mustn't approach? How does that relationship work in the US?
So in the US, the SEC is really two factions from our view. You have enforcement, which are your lawyers, and they come in, you're already in trouble. They're looking for something specifically that you violated. There's OC, which is the exam team. So it's the Office of Compliance and Inspections and Exams. Those teams are kind of like your auditors. They come in, they'll do the general review. They'll be the first line of making sure that you're doing everything that the regulations say you should be doing. that team is pretty approachable. They'll communicate via email, over the phone. You could pick up hey, what are you asking for here specifically? So that's kind of the back and forth that you have. And again, it depends on personality, right? The SEC has teams of 25-year experienced people that come in and think they know it all and will tell you how to do it. And then there's others that will work with you and say, okay, we don't believe you're doing it the right way, but here's a little bit of guidance to get it right before we throw you over to enforcement. So it really depends. Each office has different personalities of the regulators here, and the rules are the rules, but the exam team really drives how that communication goes.
And do they recognize that the regulated are actually doing a reasonable job? They're not a confrontational regulator, are they? They're very much there's the rule book. Are you sticking within the rules? If you're not, you're in trouble. But if you are, you're kind of okay.
Yeah, in our experience, that's typically on the advisor side. They'll interpret it, and if we've interpreted a different way, they'll listen. They'll give you a chance to respond to any deficiencies that they believe are in there, and go back and forth. And eventually, it either is they deem it a deficiency and you fix it, or they say, "Oh, you have a good point," and they take your recommendation on how you see it. On FINRA side, on the broker-dealer side, it's a little more black and white. There's rules, there's prohibitions, and you can't do certain things. So FINRA, we like to say, is more the rules are black and white, and there's a little bit more subjectivity on the SEC advisor side of interpreting the rule and putting policies in place to meet the spirit. The SEC has a reasonableness standard that they implement on their programs and in their reviews. If you're taking a reasonable approach, reasonable disclosures, they'll work with you. FINRA, on the other hand, if there's prohibitions, there's certain things you can't do. So that's a little bit of a distinction here in the US.
Now, I know that people at conferences always say there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I feel this may be the exception to that rule. America's a big place. Lots of stuff is done federally. Some stuff is done locally. Do you, as a CCO, if you've got a firm in Florida versus Texas versus Pennsylvania, are you doing different things because there's a state component to what you're doing as well as a federal component? Or is it all set at federal level and that's that? That wasn't too stupid a question.
No.
Maybe.
If you meet certain thresholds, you have to register with the SEC. So we use the $110 million threshold, your SEC. And they have a concept here of notice filings. So if there's certain states that require you to register in their state, if you have a number, let's say 5 investors in your firm that are in a certain state, you have to register with that state. Right. If you're federally registered, all the states say, okay, SEC trumps everything. You're an SEC registered advisor, and you just notice file in our state. Hey, we're here, but we're SEC. So they defer on that. And that's what we deal with. That's as far as we deal with the states, is notice filing and maybe some back and forth. There are others that are registered directly with the state and have to abide by their rules, which are different than the SEC. They're similar principally, but not in the details. So there are concepts of state registered firms that have to meet the state they're either operating in or located in. So a lot of ours, we do, all the states are different and different thresholds. So we make sure if they have new clients, did they meet that, and make sure they notice file. Now, on the flip side, if you have a problem with the SEC, the states will jump right on it. They'll notify the state regulator if you have a problem, and they'll come in and try to get their pound of flesh, just as the SEC is trying to do. So if you do have issues of where your office is located or your reps are located or clients. There are some states that are more aggressive than the others. But for the most part, if you're SEC federal registered and you've implemented a program in accordance with the Advisors Act, you're going to meet the requirements of that state.
And I noticed when you were going through your clients, insurance wasn't a thing, because insurance is done differently there, right? In most of Europe, insurance is under the primary financial regulator, and it just flexes the rules a little bit for insurance companies. But in the US, it's completely different.
Correct.
Ball of wax. There we go. There's an American saying.
Yeah.
And the concept of a CCO doesn't really work there, because insurance is all local, isn't it? It's not a federal.
Yeah, it's all over the place, and the registrations are completely separate under a different set of rules. We do have clients that are dual reps. So from our standpoint on the advisor or broker dealer side, they have a conflict of interest standard here. So if you are an insurance agent and registered, you have to disclose that. And if you are selling products to your clients, and so the ADV provides that, there are other regulatory disclosures to say, hey, by the way, we're an investment advisor, but we sell insurance as well. When they sell insurance and do all of that, that's out of our purview, and true SEC compliance advisor, broker dealer consulting, they have to adhere to all those insurance rules. But we do have a fiduciary duty to say if we're aware they're violating any other federal law, we have to bring it to their attention. So we have knowledge of what should be going on there and making sure that the conflicts are mitigated and disclosed on our side. So that's about the extent we get.
You're registered in their firm as the compliance officer. So therefore, if there's something going awry, your duty is to report that, right? That's how that comes about.
That's right. So if they're selling insurance and we know they're not registered, we would bring that to the attention of the principals of the firm.
And is that, in the UK, we have a concept of IFA, independent financial advisors, which is the retail sector where they go out. I think in the US it's RIAs, right? They're the ones that do retail stuff. Do you deal with those at all? Are they part of the CCO mix, or is it?
So RIA is registered investment advisor. That we typically go to that's the firm. The individuals are IARs, investment advisor reps. So there are certain licenses that they get to operate in certain states, and we do oversee that and facilitate continuing education and licensing requirements in the state. It's the same as the advisor that has to notice file. You may have to register as a rep if you have clients that you're holding yourself out to in certain states. Some have one. If you have one client in a state, they'll make you register with that state.
Yeah.
And if you have multiple or a place of business. So we do geography analysis of that. We do client analysis and make sure that they're meeting those requirements of the IARs.
Okay, interesting. And as I've known you a while, and we've discussed this at length, there are different CCO models. And you've worked for a number of the different model providers. You just want to run us through for the UK environment, because obviously some of the people watching this may well be thinking we should enter the US market, and just giving them an idea of what's going on. Just run us through the different types of players that you've seen there. Obviously, none of them are as good as Gryphon Compliance, goes without saying. But they will try and advertise to the clients. So
yeah, so we had clients, we have clients currently that, whether they were Canadian based, European based, that if you want to do business in the United States, the safest way to do it is to form a company, form an advisor or broker dealer in the States, and register accordingly, so that business is contained within the regulatory environment of the U.S. So once that happens, we as compliance providers could take you through that registration process, getting all of the documentation together, your type of company that you want. We've seen it all from, totally green. Somebody wants to enter, they want to form an LLC, they want to form some sort of company here, and taking that up through registering with FINRA, registering with the SEC, taking you through that entire process, introducing you to service providers, getting the custodians in place. We don't necessarily have a written checklist, but there's a playbook on getting certain things in place, developing the compliance framework, and then getting to that registration. So we have deep experience in people entering the United States and really trying to, crack the clients that are here in the U.S. It's fairly easy once you have all the information, but it's gathering all of that information and making, how do you want to do this? How do you want to handle that? What type of products do you have? Well, if you have that product, you need this license, you need this. So there's a lot of back and forth in that organization, getting up to that registration point.
And in terms of how long that takes, so in the UK, the target time for the FCA to turn something around is 3 months, 6 months. The wait time, if you're anything other than most vanilla, is 18 months of potential no until you finally get there. And it costs, with legal fees and consultancy and all the rest of it, probably around 100,000 quid to get from nothing to fully regulated with compliance and buy pre-withholdings and all the rest of it. What sort of timescales are you talking about in the US to get?
So for an investment advisor, we can file the initial ADV today, right? It's an online. You fill in the information. As long as you have all the information, you're ready to go. It will give you a certain period of time to raise your assets. You can do that type of registration. So if you're brand new and you're trying to raise money, you can file today, and then you have a certain period of time to get to the asset levels that you need to be registered. Or if you don't, you may have to state register for a while and then get to the threshold and enter an ADV and get registered with the SEC. So we see all types. And well, right now the SEC won't approve anything because they're closed. But typically
do they not get this, like air traffic controllers work for free?
No, they are not a necessary arm of the government right now here in the US. So if you register today, it will sit on the shelf until they're back and can process it. But in what we have seen is it could range anywhere from 5 days to 90 days until they approve your registration. It's usually they'll come back with a couple questions if you're offering a new product they haven't seen, or really depending on your complexity. But for the most part, once we push the button on the ADV, we operate as if they approved it. So that's really day one, or day zero, as we say, and your compliance starts from that day. So it's really not that hard to get registered. And then the SEC will come back and say, we'll try to review you within 3 years. We have seen that. So you can expect your first regulatory exam within 3 years. Some are sooner, some are the next month. We have seen that, depending on the profile of your principals and all the public risks that they deem on your firm. So anywhere from 2 days, 5 days to 90 days, we can see their approval be made. So
that would come as a shock to most people used to the European approach. And you mentioned there a review. How often do these reviews happen once you're regulated? So they said within the first 3 years we'll review you. Does that mean that your cadence is then every 3 years they'll get round to coming or take a look, or is it they only ever bother once, and then you're in, and that's that.
So SC likes to say they have a risk-based approach. So they do exams on a risk base. So the riskier you are, meaning your products, your fees, the type of clients that you have, they focus a lot on retail. So if you are selling to the retail investor, that's a risk. So they have their own risk model and they weight that and come out. They have two types of exams. The first one has never been examined before. So that's your, hey, you're new. We're going to get to you in the 3 years and we're going to look at your entire program. You have another subset we like to say is your cycle exams, where they will come around every 3 to 5 years. So that's the cadence that we go on is every 3 to 5 years, you can expect the SEC to come around. We have clients where the SEC is in there every year, just making sure that because of their risk profile, they want to make sure everything's on the up and up. I wouldn't say it's totally random, but they do come. I would say you can expect it every 3 years. We like to say our program's ready at any time, but the exam team, every 3 to 5 years, you can expect them to come in. They also have, I'm sorry, they
big exam, or is it just a checkbox, give us some examples and we're on our way? Or are they in there doing a proper job of assessing programs and checking that everything's as it should be?
We have seen two types of exams from that perspective of if it's a normal cycle exam, they could do a desktop review, which is everything over email. So everything's done virtually. We just exchange some information based on their questions, and the exam's over in 2 weeks. On-site exams is where they bring the dog and pony show, where they bring the people into your office. They want to interview everybody. They want to go, soup to nuts. They're going to review your program, and it's going to be a 6-month process of back and forth, providing information, interviews, follow-ups, and that's a full-blown exam. So that's your typical on-site exam. The difference there is a desktop may be 1/10 of the information request of what an on-site visit is. And then they also have pointed exams. So let's just say there is a big enforcement case affecting a high-profile institution here in the U.S., and a big issue came out, and they've identified other firms that may have that issue. They'll go after them. So you'll hear 12B1 fees here in mutual funds. They've done sweeps. So they have sweep exams where they'll go after a pointed topic and try to catch all these other firms in one big web. So there are different levels to the exam. But we've typically seen your on-site exam is your regular cycle exam, where they're coming into your office, meeting with people, and making sure you're doing what you say you're doing.
And in terms of the commercial arrangement with the outsourced CCO at that point, obviously that's a load of work for you guys, because all of a sudden you need to be in and around the building, attending meetings, providing evidence and auditing and all the rest of it. And sure, there's a bunch of automation. Is that something that's factored in, or is that just look, when it happens, we'll work out what it's going to cost you because it's not run of the mill anymore?
Yep. So we provide a certain level of regulatory in our ongoing fee with the client. So we believe that there's going to be some sort of regulatory inquiry or interaction, and we provide a minimum level of service for that. If there is an exam, our model's built on, we provide a certain amount of hours because we know how long it takes to get the document request list together, stage the information, answer the questions, respond to them within the time period. So we know how many hours that's going to take, and we have a fee for that. And then if it goes beyond, and there's certain things we could charge by the hour, we can charge in general. We try to do baskets of hours depending on how the exam is going. But we do budget and put into the contract some interaction with the regulators on a yearly basis.
And looking at the market of CCOs, because there are providers, big providers, that obviously it's part of a portfolio of many services that they offer. And they kind of think their brand demands a premium price. Discuss. And then there are it used to be easy, right? It was Sipperman, Forsyth, people like that. And obviously they've all been hoovered up. What do you see as the difference between the likes of Gryphon and some of the big system providers, and where do you see the breakpoints between them?
I think, there's brand recognition out there. So a lot of people want to say, okay, I'm going with the best brand out there, and that's the greatest compliance program out there. So if I put them on my roadshow or on my offering, everybody believes that they're the best. I believe the difference is you have many people at the larger firms, or let's say the elephants in the industry. They have many people providing one service. So they have different silos of people that are doing certain parts of your program that all come together to deliver your service. We like to say the smaller consulting shops are successful because there's one point of contact. It's me as your CCO, and then I deal with all those other, whether it's technology, whether it's other resources, whether it's people. I bring that all together and deliver the service. Whereas you may be dealing with 10, 12 different people when you're engaged with those firms. So they do that for scalability. They do that for efficiency and try to keep the costs down. That's all built into the price for us. That's what you're getting. You're getting this service if you hire us for CCO, and how we do it is really, we're delivering it. We're taking that. We want to provide that best service and that face-to-face and people. And again, my word of caution on the larger firms, you may be dealing with different people delivering your service on a quarter-to-quarter basis. So are they providing that effective review? Do they have the requisite knowledge of your firm to do an effective review? So that model works for certain types of clients. And then for other, as we said, not quality small, but quantity small, the smaller consulting shops really can deliver that service directly rather than trying to scale at the rates that those firms are scaling at.
And I think certainly, having looked at it, the elephants, the megaliths, are very, you as a business fit our process, right? And if your business doesn't fit our process, your business is in trouble. It's going to have to flex, because our process is our process. Because stack it high, sell it cheap. They don't do that. Stack it high, and you're going to fit into us, because we've got our system that doesn't flex. We've got our process. It doesn't flex. You have to do it our way or no way. Whereas the sort of service that you've always provided is very much bespoke. Oh, that's interesting. You want to do that and that. We're able to take that business flex. And actually, most businesses don't fit in the box. They are doing two orthogonal products that don't work, or they're working in two jurisdictions that are odd, or they're doing a certain way of doing sales or product development or whatever, that requires more flexibility than I think the big elephants can provide. And certainly, having seen both sides of it, if I were a medium small business, I would value the flexibility of approach and the human contact of a person over an elephant's brand and systematization and the rest of it, because life's too short, I think. Is that a fair assumption, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We like to say, the larger firms or the elephants, as we're referring them, like to take you and stuff you in the box.
Yeah.
We like to build the box around you. So we're nimble enough and we could pivot to build that box around you and change. You know, at some of these firms, in order to change or pivot or to customize means to break the system, right? And that's frowned upon. And whether it affects your costs, you're going to pay more for customization or something that you want more.
Yeah.
You know, and we're able to be nimble on that and really assess that within the hour if needed. Whereas at the larger firms, they can't be as nimble. They can't change the system they're implementing on 1,500 clients, where I can change the system tomorrow. And a lot of the smaller firms offer that nimbleness to be able to change on a dime and not take all the money from the client and have them pay for it.
I think there's also a small thing. So when you've got a big firm, the person dealing with any little bit of your business is probably good. Let's say they're good at that little bit of business, but then something blows up over, oh, we got a desktop exam. Oh, I don't know how to do that because my job is to feed the system with that data. Let me talk and see the system, the desktop exam department can talk to you. And I think that makes it much slower for a dynamic smaller business, because smaller businesses are more dynamic than bigger businesses. It's the nature of it. And actually fitting that model on top of it, I'm never sure that it gives great value, despite what they say and the brand and the tools and the rest of it. I'm never sure that it works necessarily for the business, because they're doing lowest cost operator, lowest skill possible to make it work. Whereas a small business is, I've got 27 problems today. I need some person that can deal with all of them together, which is
absolutely
my analysis. So completely off topic. I'm on question 2. We're on 50 minutes. So I guess with the last 8 minutes that we have together, I could either do question 3 or what are you seeing as the direction of travel of your market, right? CCOs are definitely a thing. I think everything to have in Europe, but it's never going to happen. Where do you see the headwinds coming? Where do you see the tailwinds coming? How do you see it evolving over the next 6, 12 months, 18 months? Actually, probably pre and post Trump, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, as far as our service, I think the delivery of it and the cost of hiring an in-house CCO to just do compliance, I think those days are gone. I think a lot of people may bring a CCO in, but we'll have to have the experts to deliver that service, whether it's a consulting shop or a staff internally to deliver. When most clients or potential clients see the cost benefit of hiring, and they don't have me walking around their office unutilized trying to find things, you know, having that relationship and having a person that's not a lawyer or a cost of a lawyer at the other end of a phone or at the other end of the email, I really think the outsourcing model is going to take off.
Yeah.
Now with AI and compliance platforms and different technologies, that's just going to make it more efficient on my side. I'll be able to take more business on, because I can do things faster. I can build compliance programs. I can build manuals faster. So the technology, I could do email and e-com reviews faster using Fingerprint, right? I'm trying to find the ways to do things more efficiently for the client and be able to give them and pass that cost benefit through to engaging with them. So I think the outsourcing model is going to get stronger. I think you're going to see a lot more consulting shops like ours that go back to the people approach, rather than selling you a technology and wishing you good luck. of really having that compliance service delivered using the modern technology that is available out there.
And do you see, obviously not with the Republicans because they're very free market and the rest of it, is it a sector that needs a degree of regulation or at least accreditation stroke registration, do you think? Or is it fine as it is?
We were seeing in the previous administrations a migration towards having almost like a PCAOB, SEC type of independent compliance, making sure that people are credentialed. That has since stopped. I think that focus on the business itself, letting business people be business, is the current administration's approach, not trying to put as many rules. So we don't see that. I think there are many industry players, such as the NSCP, the compliance professionals, others, ICI. There are a lot of industry players that are putting guidance out there, providing comments, and you go to their conferences, you read their press releases, and I really think that's driving the centralization of the knowledge of compliance professionals. I think they subscribe to the same industry players out there that are providing that guidance and interpreting it and lobbying the regulators to do things a certain way. As far as formal credentials, I don't ever see that, not in my lifetime of work, of having them to do that, because it's just another thing they have to govern, right? Or it's just another wing. They have the SEC. They feel that that's necessary, and we're kind of that in between of the firms, and they'll continue to educate us using risk alerts, using enforcement actions, and really they're publicizing a lot in order for us to gain that knowledge and then implement at clients.
And in terms of you as an industry getting together and saying, hey, this is a real thing, right? CCO outsourcing, we are the group of CCO outsourcers. This is so kind of like what AIMA did with hedge funds, where all the hedge funds got together and said, we want a common due diligence. We want a common standard. We want people to know that there is a default minimum so that you can compare various bits and pieces. Now, for each individual hedge fund, it was it's dumbing down certain bits of our alpha gen strategy or whatever. But for the rest of the industry, it's really useful because there was a common standard across it. And in the UK, we had a thing called the Hedge Fund Standards Board and those sort of things. And it's quite useful to be able to go, yeah, look, there's loads of us. These are our minimum, what we will offer as minimum service. Hold us to it. Here it is. Is that a direction of travel for the market, or is it too nascent at the minute before it's in its growth phase?
I think there are groups attempting to do that. I attended the NSCP, which is your National Society of Compliance Professionals conference last week. So they have resources and libraries, and they bring compliance professionals across the US, across the world, into a conference and say, hey, here's best practices. Here's how we see things. And people ask questions. They didn't bring any regulators this time because they're not working, but they'll bring regulators to you. They'll issue guidance. And they're really that first line of trying to provide that uniformity across the board. Hey, what are other shops doing? What are big shops doing? What are little shops doing? I think when I first started in the industry, all the little shops waited for the big shops to do something and interpret. How did they do it? How did they disclose it? You're not seeing that as much anymore. It's people doing things, adopting best practices, talking. There's a lot less competition between consultants and much more collaboration, I think, through societies like the compliance professionals and other industries out there, other industry leaders. I think you're seeing a lot more collaboration on that side than competition.
Perfect. And we're coming up on the hour now. So thank you very much indeed for your time. It's been immense. Obviously, it's still daytime there, and it's very much nighttime here UK as the sun has disappeared. Any final messages before we end the compliance catch up for this time?
I just think, assess clients that are coming into the U.S. or here in the U.S. Assess your resources. Make sure that you have that expertise. If the SC has not been in there or FINRA has not been in there, they will. So find a compliance consultant, find a good advisor, and have them on board. Because if you try to go in there alone, it's not the greatest experience in the world. So that's a little pitch from our side.
Perfect.
Hire that compliance consultant, get that expertise in.
And of course, we will put all of the details in LinkedIn, in the comments, and the comments below this when it will all scroll up. And John, thank you very much. I'm seeing you in a couple of weeks. Looking very much forward to that. Stay safe till I do see you. And to everybody else who's been watching, thank you very much indeed. And join us next month for another compliance catch-up. Thank you very much indeed.